For those who don't know about what this tutorial is, the Khyentse Vision Project has started a new initiative where we focus on a particular text of the month. And this is the second month that we've been doing this. So we invite a special guest teacher to teach on the text first, and then Arne Schelling, our dear research coordinator and Siddhartha's intent instructor, is going to be hosting these sessions, which are tutorial sessions. So this is a chance to go a little bit more deeply into the text and ask questions and spend a bit more time kind of really diving into it. And we hope that you feel very comfortable and relaxed to ask whatever questions you have. So we have Arne, who is the main host, and then Jamie, who's joining us today, who is the translator of this text that is our text of the month. So Jamie is one of our Khyentse Vision Project in-house translators. And welcome to the session. I'm going to hand over to Arne right now, but it's a delight and a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to invite you to explore these precious teachings and texts a little bit more. So over to you, Arne.
Thank you, Dolma. And to everyone, this is the one and only Dolma, who is our project director and the good heart of the entire project that we are doing. Yes, as she said, today we will go through the text that Dongsa Asanga Vajra Rinpoche taught last Sunday. It was, exactly 1 week ago. And it is the text called the Yoga of Unparalleled Compassion. So it's a mind training instruction by the great Indian Mahāsiddha Virūpa. And the session will be recorded, as you can see, so that will be later available on our YouTube channel. And after the prayers, I will ask Jamie, who was the translator, as Domala said, to give the context, origin, the background of this text, and then he will go through the first half of the text, and then I will do the same with the second half. And in between, we will always give space and time for Q&A. So as Dolma said, please don't be shy. And ideally, you can raise your virtual hand so that we can see that you have a question. And then ideally, we can talk with each other, and discuss the topic that you want to discuss. In case you feel shy, then you can also write something in the chat, and then we will also answer and address that. Okay. Then let's start with some prayers. I will share them. Homage to the Buddha, the teacher. Homage to the Dharma, the protector. Homage to the great Sangha. To all these three, I continually offer homage. Homage to the Buddha, the teacher. Homage to the Dharma, the protector. Homage to the great Sangha. Homage to all these three, I continually offer homage. Homage to the Buddha, the teacher. Homage to the Dharma, the protector. Homage to the great Sangha. To all these three, I continually offer homage. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And then let's briefly pray to Virūpa. That is a text or a prayer composed by Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. You can also find that in our reading room. Namo Guru Virūpaya. Know of all scriptures accepted and cared for by the Dakinis, glorious Virūpa, who achieved the state of realization, chief of the ocean of Siddha families, to you I pray. Dispel all obstacles and grant me ordinary and supreme cities. Okay, thank you everyone. And now over to you, Jamie. Please guide us through the text.
Thank you, Arne. Yeah, hello and welcome everyone from my side as well. I'm glad we have the chance to dive a little bit deeper into the wonderful text that Rinpoche taught on last week, and that I had the fortunate opportunity to translate. It's it's really a very special and beneficial instruction. I think it's very concise and to the point, and formulated in a very straightforward and uncomplicated way, so we can easily remember it during our busy daily lives. Yeah, and this sort of down to earth practicality is a very typical feature of the mind training teachings. Lojong is the Tibetan term, and that's the genre, the textual genre that this text belongs to. Yeah, the Lojong, the mind training instructions, they initially evolved within the Kalam tradition after Atisha's arrival in Tibet in the first half of the 11th century. But over time, they've been adapted in basically all the major schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And if you look at the Tibetan term Lojong itself, the connotations of the word by itself already basically tell us what the key features of the mind training practices are. Yeah, the first syllable lo is a generic term for mind or thought, and specifically in this context, it refers to our attitude towards ourselves and others in the world around us. And the second syllable jong or jongwa means something like, it has several connotations actually. It means first of all to train, to acquire a specific skill, yeah, and to habituate oneself to specific ways of thinking and cultivating mental qualities such as compassion, loving kindness, and bodhicitta, as in our text. And lastly, it also means cleansing, yeah, to cleanse or to purify, in the Lojong context, purify one's mental afflictions, maybe one can say. Yeah, so the mind training practices, they work in a very practical way to basically change our understanding, our basic understanding of others, by recognizing that they're equal to ourselves. And we do this by considering that every being has been our mother over beginningless lifetimes. That's the very typical argument that's also put forth in our text today. And also by acknowledging the fact that all beings are equal in their wish or pursuit for happiness, yeah, and trying to avoid suffering. Yeah, and it's that idea of sort of mental transformation, or basically shifting our attitude from a self-centered point of view to an altruistic, other-centered point of view. Yeah, and that's the key idea of the mind training instructions. We transfer our deluded state of self-centeredness and egoism into altruism, yeah, by developing compassion, by developing bodhicitta, and then they also have very common practices such as tonglen, yeah, giving and taking, like giving away our own happiness and taking upon ourselves the suffering of others. And yeah, unlike other established teachings of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, like for example the very systematized lamjim or highly ritualized deity yoga visualizations of the Vajrayana, the mind training teachings, they are often very simple, yeah, without complicated or potentially confusing structure. And many of them, such as the one laid out in our text today, they don't even require formal sitting practice. Yeah, and yeah, if you're interested in exploring the scriptural sources of Lojong, I would suggest you to have a look at the Bodhicharya Avatara by Shantideva. That's usually the text that is mentioned as the source of the mind training teachings. And there's also the Ratnavali, the Rinchen Changwa by Nagarjuna. And then other canonical works like the Vimalakirti Sutra is sometimes mentioned, the Akashagarbha Sutra, and they are all available translation, in English translation already. In Khyentse Wangpo's collected works, there are roughly 7 texts. I think we can classify as Lojong works, and his main and sort of best known work belonging to that genre is an instruction manual on the famous 7-point mind training. And then there are some other minor works, such as the, especially beautiful, I find, 8 sessions mind training and Sumpa Lotsawar's oral lineage mind training. We have those available on our reading room already. And they are both also very practical, hands-on instructions, basically to help us reorient our attitude and to make our lives a little bit more compassionate and less self-centered. If you want to have a look, you'll find them on our website either by just searching mind training in the search bar, or by clicking on the mind training tag that's there. If you open the translation of the text that we're discussing today, there's a little tag below the thumbnail, the little Virūpa image at the top of the page. Yeah, the text we are discussing today, the Yoga of Unparalleled Compassion. It's a pith instruction, a mengag in Tibetan by Virūpa on mind training. Rinpoche already gave some hints about the history of the text, but I thought I'd give you a little bit more information today. And I think one can classify the text as an instructional commentary. In Tibetan, one would call it teeg, maybe, instruction manual. And it's a commentary in the sense that it comments on a root text, or to be more precise, it's not the entire text, but just a short excerpt, a verse from the root text, and gives very concrete guidance about how the content of the verse from the root text can be put into practice. And the root text is a canonical scripture attributed to Virūpa, coming from the Tengyur, with the slightly unwieldy Sanskrit title Sunish Prapancha Tattvopadesha, in English a pith instruction on suchness, utterly free or completely free from conceptual elaboration. It's a part of the Tabgyu Natso section of the Tengyur, the section of the various skillful means tantras. So in reality here we are dealing with Vajrayana material, even if the extracted quote can also be read and explained in a Sutrayana context, and in fact that's what Khyentse Wangpo is doing here. Although that towards the end of the text there are some passages with a slight Vajrayana flavor, as you might have seen already. So the root text, the Sunish Prapancha Tattvopadesha is an upadesha, also a pith instruction, a mengag in Tibetan. The root text talks about very common Vajrayana themes, such as the guru's blessings being the source of spiritual accomplishment and devotion as essential for realization. He talks about the qualities of the nature of mind as the empty awareness and the ultimate state beyond conceptual elaboration, beyond conceptual thoughts. It also mentions Buddha nature, actually, the idea that Buddhahood is nowhere else to be found than inside us, within us, that one should not look for it outside. And then one of the central themes of the text, and that's what the quoted passage in our text is about, the compassionate motivation to benefit all beings, which should always be part of Vajrayana practice as well, of course. But it doesn't actually go into much detail about how to actually develop compassion, and that's precisely what Khyentse Wangpo does in this text here, telling us exactly how to do it. Probably we shouldn't actually say Khyentse Wangpo, and yeah, with that, we come to the next important point, which hasn't really been discussed in the teaching last week. The colophon of our text, colophon, for those who don't know, is this short inscription sometimes in smaller font, usually find at the end of Tibetan texts, that give a lot of crucial information about the circumstances in which the text was written, like when, by whom, who was the author, where was the text written. And the colophon of our text says that it was excerpted from a work by a master with a very similar name, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo of Nesar. So it's not entirely Khyentse Wangpo's own work. Yeah, Khyentse Wangpo was a very important Sakya master in the Lamje tradition from the 16th century, and famous especially for being a disciple of Tsarchen Losai Gyatso. They were both abbots of Shalu Monastery in Zhang in central Tibet, and one often talks about him in the context of the Lamje Lobshe teachings, because he was the first master to have ever written these teachings down. And the connection between him and Khyentse Wangpo is that he was considered a previous incarnation of Khyentse Wangpo. Yeah, the colophon says that the text was excerpted by an instruction manual by a teak written by this Nesar Khyentse Wangpo. Actually, it literally says that it was excerpted and written by Khyentse Wangpo. So there are two verbs. Yeah, it says to excerpt and to write. So we unfortunately don't know how much Khyentse Wangpo simply copied and how much he modified the original. But the fact that he adds the verb for to write, chipa in Tibetan, seems to suggest that he did make some changes and add some things to the original rather than just copying it. Yeah, unfortunately, the present edition of the collected writings of Nesar Khyentse Wangpo, the one we have, the edition we have available today, doesn't contain such an instruction manual mentioned by Khyentse Wangpo in the colophon. And probably it simply got lost, or is somewhere and hasn't been discovered yet. Yeah, there is no way unfortunately we can verify how much of the material in the text comes from Khyentse Wangpo's hand and how much was just copied from Khyentse Wangchuk's instruction manual. And now that we've already translated quite a good amount of Khyentse Wangpo's works, it's becoming more and more clear that that's a very common phenomenon in the texts of his collected writings. Yeah, many texts don't come entirely from his own hand, but were lifted from the works of past masters and then occasionally edited, supplemented, and expanded. Yeah, which used to be a very common practice among Tibetan authors. And in Khyentse Wangpo's case, he did so certainly out of the motivation to preserve the original work. Yeah, that was one of Khyentse Wangpo's most important missions. Preserving the teachings of all Tibetan Buddhist schools and traditions. Yeah, that he wanted to preserve the original work, seeing that it had because he saw that it had a great value or potential, and maybe was for some reason in danger of getting lost. And yeah, that's exactly what seems to be the case for the source of our text today. Nesar Khyentse Wangchuk's instruction manual is not available, at least not for the moment. So it seems that his mission was at least partially successful. Yeah, are there any, I'm happy to take questions if you have any already now. You're welcome to raise your virtual hand at any time. If not, we'll continue giving you the opportunity to ask them also further down. All right. To conclude the discussion of the historical context, I also wanted to mention that the Lung, for those of you who were there last week, that the Lung you've received from Rinpoche last time was actually a text from the Lojong Gyatsa collection, which is basically the most important anthology or compendium of the mind training teachings. And in that collection, there's a text called The Mind Training of Glorious Virūpa. And as our text by Khyentse Wangpo, it's an instruction manual, yeah. And but it's attributed to the 13th century master Lo Lodza Sherab Rinchen, Tibetan translator, and a certain Dharma Acharya. And this seems especially important because these two masters formed the team of Tibetan translator and Indian Pandita working together to translate Virūpa's Sunish Prapancha Tattvopadesha, the text I just mentioned, which is the root text of our mind training instruction today. Yeah, these two masters translated the root text. And then it seems that they also authored an instruction manual, which was then included in that famous mind training collection. And yeah, their work by Lo Lodza and Darpanacharya, has two main sections. And the first is the Yoga of Unparalleled Compassion, and it's extremely similar to our text today. Yeah, and that was for sure also the source of our text. Yeah, and the second part of that work is called the Yoga of the Root Cause. Yeah, and it mainly discusses and how to develop bodhicitta. Yeah, in its two aspects, relative and ultimate bodhicitta. The text is also available in translation for those of you who are interested to read it. It's part of the mind training volume of the Library of Tibetan Classic Series, translated by Geshe Thupten Jinpa. All right, so if we now have a look at our text. It begins with two poetic verses about the relevance of the subject of the text, compassion, and in the second verse, the very typical pledge to compose one often finds at the beginning of Tibetan treatises. And compassion here is described as a nectar that heals the suffering of all beings, and together in combination with bodhicitta, it is what will eventually lead us to enlightenment. And then in the second verse, the author writes that in order to get the water lily of liberation to blossom, that he's now going to give this teaching, which by itself is enough to attain the ultimate goal. Yeah, it's a complete path in itself. That's why he calls it the sole basis of sustenance for those who have the fortune to receive it, basically, in the last line of the second verse. And then in the short instruction that follows, Khyentse Wangpo talks a bit more about the significance of compassion. It's often described as the root of the Mahayana, because it's just the foundation, as the text says, the foundations of all the qualities of a fully enlightened Buddha. And without it, even the six perfections or generation and completion stages of the Vajrayana would not be so useful and very limited in scope, because they would not have the vast motivational background, the vast motivational scope of the Mahayana to do what one does for the benefit of all beings. And yeah, it's an essential ingredient that can't be left out. Otherwise, things like here the 6 perfections or even the practices of the Vajrayana would basically be like building a castle on sand. Yeah, the foundation would be missing, and what we are building will in the end just sink and collapse. And yeah, further down, Khyentse Wangpo then provides the root verse of the commentary from Virūpa's text, and he calls it Vajra lines, Dorje Tsikang in Tibetan. Here it's important not to confuse that with another text by Virūpa called Vajra lines with exactly the same name, Dorje Tsikang, which is the root text of the Lamje system, the basis of the tantric system in the Sakya traditions. That's a different text, yeah. Here it just refers to the canonical text I mentioned before, the Sunishprapancha Tattvopadesha, which is a entirely in verse, yeah. That's why here it's called Vajra lines, I think. And because it is Vajrayana content, so he refers to it as Vajra lines. And then after that, we get the actual instruction in 2 parts, a direct and a gradual meditation. In the direct meditation, first part, one tries to develop compassion for the main object of one's hatred, one's worst enemy, so to speak, or adversary. And here the text specifies that we don't actually need to be sitting, as I said before. That's very typical for many mind training instructions. We don't need to be sitting on our meditation cushion in order to do the practice. We can do it anywhere, wherever it is convenient at any time. Yeah. And we visualize in front of us that person being in an unbearable state of physical suffering and pain. And yeah, sometimes the texts are less precise. Here it actually tells us that their flesh has been removed, and it's quite strong imagery, that they're basically skinned alive. And then we repeat almost like an incantation or a mantra. And here the Tibetan uses the word nyingje, the actual term for compassion, but it's something Tibetans say when they see or encounter someone suffering, which is a little bit difficult to translate because we don't just have one word like "oh poor thing" or something like that. When the Tibetans, for example, when they see an animal suffering, for example, they see nyingje. Yeah, it's the phrase they would say to express compassion. And if the phrase I put here in the translation, "oh, this poor enemy of mine," doesn't do it for you or doesn't resonate with you, I think it's okay to choose something else that expresses that meaning of nyingje. And it's very important that we have it very clearly in our minds what the term nyingje means, yeah, and what it actually is that we are trying to generate. The Tibetan term that is usually translated as compassion, nyingje, literally means the supreme heart, yeah, or the Lord of hearts. Nying being the heart, and je is like a chief or a lord, yeah. And it is defined as the altruistic wish that all beings may be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, yeah. And it's actually not just resonating or feeling with the pain of others, putting oneself in their situation. That's what we would usually call in English empathy, sort of vicariously feeling with or for another. The word empathy is sort of how can I say, resonance with the feeling of another. Yeah, if you're moved by the suffering of someone, even though you make a clear distinction between yourself and that person, you suffer because the other suffers. Yeah, and when you repeat that over time, this kind of empathic resonance with the pain of others can even lead to distress or emotional sort of exhaustion, yeah, or maybe even burnout, yeah. And compassion and loving kindness, which are what we are aiming for, do include empathy as well, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't recognize the other's suffering or feeling the need to help them. But it goes beyond that. Yeah, compassion and loving kindness are also associated with positive emotions. Yeah, while there is such a thing as empathy fatigue, I would say, which is what sometimes occurs in, yeah, we see that in caregivers like nurses or medical doctors, for example, who are confronted with a lot of suffering and then sometimes are overwhelmed or burned out by that. But I would argue that we can't really speak of compassion fatigue. Yeah, I think that was mentioned during the Q&A session last week as well. Yeah, in fact, compassion, rather than leading to distress and discouragement, it sort of increases our inner strength, I would say, and inner balance and determination to help those who suffer, rather than just feeling that suffering. We want to do something about it. And so first we need that empathy that kind of alerts us that the other person might be suffering, and to notice that. And then that's followed by compassion, yeah, the desire to dispel these sufferings and their causes, and the determination to do something about it. And then to that we add loving kindness, yeah, the wish that the suffering being, the suffering person, is happy and has all the causes and ingredients to the tools to attain that happiness. And yeah, the mind training teachings sometimes describe these very beautiful visualizations where one just kind of sends clouds or golden light rays of love and benevolence that totally embrace and clear away all the suffering of the person one is meditating on. Yeah, these are all the ingredients of Nyingje and the connotations the term carries. Yeah, it's not just feeling the suffering of others that will eventually maybe even burn us out, or looking down on them with pity or something like that. It's not that either. And we want to generate that kind of compassion, and yeah, we try to do that in a way that at a certain point these thoughts come naturally to us. Yeah, that's why the text here tells us to recite it out loud over and over again, like a mantra. Yeah, so we basically almost get into a type of flow state. Yeah, I think that's maybe why here the text refers to this first meditation as the meditation of the flow of compassion. All right. Are there any questions at this point? I haven't really looked at the chat while I was talking.
It says, visualize that their flesh has been removed and that they are no more than a trembling skeleton. And I connect this with the descriptions of various suffering, hell realms, the Preta realms, the animal realms, human realms, demigod realms, and god realms. Is this kind of description or visualization about seeing the deepest causes of suffering and trying to eliminate all of those. And is that why it's unparalleled compassion and not ordinary compassion, so to speak?
I would say the text is called Unparalleled Compassion because compassion is described as the source or the root or the foundation of all the qualities of a Buddha, that there is nothing that is superior to it. Yeah, that it's a matchless, an unparalleled sort of emotion. That's why I think it's referred to as unparalleled. Yeah. In Buddhism, the deepest causes of suffering would usually be described as ignorance. Yeah. And here, I mean, in order to really make that a wish, that desire, and that feeling of nyingje, of compassion come up in our minds. Yeah, I think it's using this very, very strong imagery, so that it's really something that touches you deep within. Yeah, that it creates that emotion. That's why it's using this imagery, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. The description is very similar to the hell realms. Yeah, because of course these are the places of the greatest suffering in the end. Right. If there are no further questions at the moment, I think I'll hand over to Arne.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. That was lovely. So, yeah, if you have the text in front of you, you can see that there's first the direct meditation. This is what Jamie just went through. And then there is the gradual meditation. And I thought maybe we would just read it together, and then I will footnote each sentence a little bit. And I will share that to that PDF. The first thing I wanted to mention is that so in this gradual meditation, we are here learning like a little bit like cause and effect, you know, how we can develop compassion. And Medya, I think you just emailed us on WhatsApp or in the Zoom, you chatted with Rashmi, why compassion is important. It is basically, I think, Bodhisattva, you know, the mind training text that Jamie mentioned earlier. In that text, Shantideva is saying that, yeah, all the suffering in the world comes because we are thinking of ourselves, you know, like being self-centered. And compassion is basically the opposite, you know, it is basically being other-centered. And that is also what Shantideva is saying, you know, all the happiness in the world comes from thinking about others. So yeah, the self-centered attitude, self-importance, you know, that really limits our mental space, our freedom, and yeah, gives so much room for suffering that we are experiencing. And based on that, we also inflict suffering on others. So therefore, from Mahayana point of view, compassion is really the key out of it. And traditionally in the Kadampa tradition, there's like a 7-point pith instruction, you know, how we can develop bodhicitta, like in a cause and effect way, you know, in a gradual way. And yeah, Jamie already mentioned the Kadam tradition. And this is, yeah, a Tibetan term, and it basically means, it's a tradition founded by Atisha, and it's basically taking all the words or instructions, the ka, you know, in Tibetan ka, all the words of the Buddha as pith instructions, you know, to practice. And that means dham, you know, the words as instructions. So ka, dham. And here I show you a small chart that I prepared. That is usually how the gradual path is to develop bodhicitta. So first we recognize beings as our past mothers. So therefore, of course, we need like a multiple life kind of vision. Then secondly, we remember their kindness. Thirdly, we develop a sense of gratitude because they have been so kind when they have been our kind mothers. And then fourth, we develop love. And here, this is the definition, of love, that we wish that other beings are happy, So when we say to somebody, I love you, then that should be the implication, I want you to be happy and to have the causes of happiness. Compassion basically is the other side of the coin. It means like, may you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then number 6, it's actually laksam in Tibetan. Here it's translated as responsibility, but it could also be something like a noble mind, almost like Ningje, how Jamie was explaining it. Maybe beautiful mind. That we then really take the responsibility to help others and make sure that they are free from suffering and make sure that they are happy. And the result of these 6 causes, and there's a sequence, right? And one is based on the previous one, then is bodhicitta. So this is like the general approach in the Kadam tradition. But now let's have a look how our text is going through that. It is similar, but a little bit different. So if we have a look here, so first it says the meditation on the reasons. So that means already it's also a cause and result relationship here for compassion is as follows. Reflect in the following way, reciting out loud, why should I have compassion for this person? And then the answer is because this person was my mother or my poor mother. So having the multiple life vision in mind and that we have had already infinite number of beings, then of course we had infinite number of mothers. So, and therefore one can conclude that at some point in our previous lives, every single being has been our mother in that life. And may it be like an animal or a human or in other realms, but but always there was this loving and caring relationship from our mother to us. Of course, I think that was discussed also during Dongsa Rinpoche's teaching. Maybe sometimes our mother was not that kind, and maybe was even bad to us. But still, Dongsa Rinpoche was saying that still she gave birth to us, She suffered a lot during the 9 months of pregnancy and then during birth. And then if she kept us for a few months or years at least, there's also a lot of suffering and sacrifice she had to do. And she was like, so often like sort of forced, to give up her wishes to instantaneously or immediately be there for us, Nevertheless, if mother doesn't work for us, we can use any other example, like maybe we can use father or grandmother, for example, if in this life we were raised by our grandmother or by our older brother. We can use whatever example speaks to us. Or we can also think of lover or partner or our children, whatever stimulates this idea of that person having been kind to us and us being grateful to that kindness. And then, here it says, oh, my poor mother. Jamie was already addressing what is meant with that. Then the second line is saying, this person has been my mother, not just once, but countless times since beginning this time in samsara. Oh, my poor mother. So here's the point. Yes, beginning this time in samsara. So it is not, from Buddha's point of view, it is not the case that we have had been enlightened at some point, like being in paradise and then falling out of it. That would not make sense because then enlightenment would be impermanent, right? But we have been in samsara always, in the sense of there's no beginning, there's not like the start of samsara. But always there have been samsara in the past, you know, if we have this framework of past, present, and future. So again, yeah, we have never been enlightened. Even though our nature is the Buddha, you know, we have the Buddha nature, so we can attain enlightenment basically any moment, as Milarepa said, but we haven't done, or I haven't done so far. So therefore, I have been in samsara since beginningless time. And yeah, that point is again addressing what I said earlier, that and then through countless of times, beings have been our mother. So like you can pick out one being, like I could pick out Rashmi, who is kindly hosting us, you know. So I was her daughter or son many times in previous lives. And that is true. Number 3 is saying really for each person. And number 3 is then saying each time this person was my mother, she did not care about her life. What I said earlier, of course, she survived, you know, but you know, if the baby is crying or if is falling down or is hungry, you know, then immediately always the mother is giving up whatever she was doing and then taking care of the baby, you know. So there's always this immediate other-centeredness or baby-centeredness or child-centeredness in contrast to ego-centeredness. So she did not care about her life and body. The only thing she would ever think of or considered was me. She has done an incredible amount for me and protected me from inestimable harm. Oh, my dear old mother. Yeah, I guess that is obvious, right? Like if we would not have had a mother or whoever you want to remember who was taking care of you, we would have died, you know, like no baby is independent, you know, like, and can just like, I don't know, go to kindergarten or make his or her money and buy food, you know, of course not, you know. I think one expression is we are like a naked frog, you know, the animal when we are born, you know, like totally helpless. And yeah, we can't take care of anybody, and we cannot even take care of ourselves. So as a newborn and baby, we totally have to rely on others. And others here is represented by mother. Then the 4th reason is saying, even though the 2 of us were mother and child throughout many lifetimes, at present this person is unaware of ever having been my mother because of separation through birth and death. For the same reason, I too was unaware that I used to be this person's child. Out of control, as if they were insane, they brought all kinds of harm upon me. How terribly sad. If my present mother were to become insane or possessed by a demon and were to attack me with a weapon, how incredibly sad that would be. Oh, my poor mother, her mind is confused by fierce hatred and she has become like an insane person. I must immediately find the best possible means to help her. So, so the text is saying, yes, we have been in that relationship like mother and child, you know, through many lifetimes, and but we are not aware of that. And usually the reason is if we die, you know, and then the hallucinations start, you know, of our body dissolving and us entering into the bardo, then that is sort of so overwhelming that we forget, you know, what we have done in this life and with whom we have been connected in this life. And then for the first half time of the bardo, then we might have some remembrance, you know, and some habits related to the previous life. But then in the second half of the bardo, yeah, everything is more like towards the direction of the next life. And yeah, all that is so overwhelming. So we really forget, you know, we forget whom we have been connected to, who our partner was, who our parents and who our kids have been, you know. So therefore it is like said here, like if as if they were insane, you know. It's like, yeah, it's like having Alzheimer's, you know, like, let's say, yeah, I'm a son of my mother, you know, and yeah, if she would now have Alzheimer's, you know, and then not recognize me, I mean, would be terrible, you know, like, would be really sad, you know, and but at least in that example, I still remember who she is, you know, and therefore I'm sad, you know. But if also I lose that memory, you know, and also have Alzheimer, of course, then we act as if we are total strangers, you know, and yeah, there is no caring and no gratitude or anything, you know, because our minds are so confused, yeah, and therefore, yeah, we feel very disconnected, you know. But if it's only like the mother and me, let's say, being healthy, then of course, it is so saddening, you know, to see that maybe she is perceiving me as an enemy even, you know, and is afraid of me or, yeah, or scared of me. So therefore, yeah, the text is saying, yeah, oh, my poor mother, her mind is confused by fierce hatred, you know. So that is basically what, from my point of view, you all are, you know, you are all like my previous mothers who have Alzheimer, you know, and don't recognize, you know, that we have been connected in that relationship. And I'm sure you have heard the story of Katyayana. You know, he was a great Arhat student of Buddha Shakyamuni, and he had like many powers. So he could, for example, see the previous lives, you know, of the beings. And there's one example of that he went out, I think, begging for alms. And then she saw in front of her house, she saw like a lady with her baby on the lap, or a small child, I guess. And she was eating some fish, and she was like throwing the bones at a dog that was nearby, so that the dog can chew on the bones. And then the dog was sort of too annoying, and then she kicked the dog, you know. And at the same time, she was, I think, breastfeeding the baby, you know. So that is what the Arhat said. And then, because of his mental power, he said, "Oh, this is," and he started to laugh, you know. And she said something like, "Oh, you are eating the flesh of your father. You're kicking your mother. You're chewing the bones of your father. At the same time, you're breastfeeding your enemy." You know, like, oh, samsara is so tragic, basically, you know. The point is, the Arhat could see that the fish is actually the rebirth of that lady's father, you know, that she was eating, and that the bones she was giving to the dog. And the dog was the rebirth of her beloved mother, and she was kicking the mother. And then her own baby was the enemy in her previous life, you know, and she's like breastfeeding her enemy, you know. So that is, yeah, so absurd, you know, and how we behave. And the reason is because, yeah, we have this, how our text says, insanity, you know, or Alzheimer or dementia, you know, that we don't remember, you know, our connections, you know. And therefore we treat beings with disrespect. Okay, and then the last one, and then I want to hear from you. Then the fifth reason, motivated by hatred, not only toward myself, but also towards many other sentient beings, this person has accumulated extremely bad karma, by the power of which they will be reborn in the great hells. With no way out, they must undergo unbearable suffering. How sad. So, therefore here, our text says, yeah, that our our mother sentient beings, of course, if they are in samsara, they have all kinds of emotions. So they also have hatred, you know. And then we know from the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, right? Hatred is one klesha. So therefore, it is part of the second Noble Truth, you know, the origin of suffering. And from klesha, if one is not aware of them, they lead to karma, you know, that's also part of the second Noble Truth of suffering. And those two together, karma and klesha, will then lead to suffering because they lead to, unwanted rebirths, like the example here is great health, you know. And so therefore, our mothers, or beings who have, like all beings who have been our caring mothers, because they have no control over their mind, they have kleshas, and because of kleshas, they have karma, and because of karma, they will be reborn in states where they have unbearable suffering. So this is what we should be aware of, you know, that those beings who loved us so much are now suffering without, of course, without wanting that and without any control. Okay, what do you think about these 5 reasons? Tell me if you have anything you want to discuss. Oh, and Marcus asked for the PDF earlier with the Atisha's way. I will just put it in the meeting here. Any questions to this part of the text? Okay, then let's continue. There's the text to go. Then it says here, meditate from the bottom of your heart. So we are asked to really mean it, you know. We cannot do this as a lip service, you know, but we really have to feel it, you know, and really have that in our heart and not just thinking it. So meditate from the bottom of your heart on each of these 5 reasons for compassion and recite them many hundreds and thousands of times. Yeah, that is usually you can take it literally, but it also could just mean a lot, you know, really recite that a lot. And yeah, those big numbers, we know that also from Dendro, right? Doing 100,000 of this and 100,000 that. Yeah, is of course necessary because remember Jamie talked about mind training, Lo Zhong, and how do we train ourselves in, like train our mind or train ourselves in whatever? Through repetition, you know, we have to habituate ourselves with new ways of thinking, you know, new ways of understanding. So, you know, if I want to become a lawyer, you know, I have to repeatedly study the law, you know, the rules and everything, you know, and then it can work, you know. So therefore here also we have to, the quantity does matter, you know. We have, of course, quality as well, that is meant by from your heart, but that quantity is also important, you know, to repeatedly do it, because our ignorance or confusion or our self-centeredness is also very repetitive. So therefore the opposite, the antidote has to be repetitive as well. As you do these recitations, you will develop heartfelt compassion for the object like the sentient being. That is just the term we use in Buddhism, you know, of your contemplation, so strong that tears flow from your eyes. So that again means, we have to mean it, you know, we have to do it from the bottom of our heart. So the quality aspect, you know, has to be there. Once this occurs, gradually extend your reflection to other adversaries and then to your loved ones, neighbors, fellow countrymen, and so on, up to all sentient beings, infinite space. Yeah, so we use sort of the mother as as the starting point, you know, because supposedly it's easy, you know. Again, if the mother is not working for you, you're somebody, you know, who is loving to you, you know, maybe your partner, you know, and then remember that all sentient beings have been your partner in previous lives at some point. So, and so start with that one person, and then, slowly, like geographically, you know, extend it, you know, and include more and more beings, you know. First your family or your inner circle of friends and strangers, maybe even enemies at some point, you know, and then everybody. Infinite space always means like, yeah, the number of beings is as infinite as the space is vast, you know. Then, as in the practice of flow of compassion and the fourth reason for compassion already mentioned, because of separation through birth and death, we, mother and child, are like a heap of peas that have been hit by a stone, you know, totally scattered and not hanging together. We wander about, unable to recognize, let alone help each other. You know, if we both have Alzheimer, mother and child, yeah, we behave as total strangers, you know. Without having even heard or seen each other, we have been scattered in different places. Whatever happiness or suffering may happen to my mother, she is worthy of compassion. Yeah, I think that we talked about that. Do you have anything you want to discuss on that before we continue? Oh, Nijala was writing, when we practice, do we need to do both direct and gradual meditation or any of them? I would say any of them, whatever speaks to you. You know, if you feel more like the short, concise, direct approach to that. But if you feel more like the gradual, step-by-step, longer approach, that do that, you know. It's like in sadhanas also, you know, in Vajrayana sadhanas, we also have short versions and long versions. And yeah, as the Dalai Lama says, you know, like, yes, even though people like the short version because it saves time, you can only understand the short version if you understand the long version. So therefore, it's very good to feel home in both versions, you know. Okay, then let's continue. So after you have wholeheartedly, again, we mean it, meditated. As you know, meditation means like familiarizing yourself with, you know, so we are really getting used to it, you know, we are really becoming that. Imagine how wonderful it would be if these mothers of mine actualized the state of a supreme deity. So upon seeing, you know, that what I said earlier, or what the text said earlier, you know, like pleasure, karma, truth of suffering, negative rebirth, you know. So if that is the state, and that is the situation, you know, of so many of our mothers, so then, of course, we are not, yeah, we are not, what is it? We are not being passive about it, you know, but of course we want to liberate them, you know, from that state. And so that is compassion, right? The wish that they are free from suffering, and plus love, you know, we want that they are happy. And of course, we could wish them to have a better samsaric rebirth, you know, that would be like a samsaric upgrade, you know, that is already better, it's already love, but that is still conditioned, right? It's still samsara. So therefore, we wish them the best, you know, basically attain Buddhahood, or here it says, you know, actualize the state of a supreme deity. So this is a little bit the Vajrayana part that Jamie was already mentioning earlier. I think that as a consequence of that, all your mother sentient beings swiftly transform into a Yidam deity. So this is what we are then visualizing, you know, that even though they don't recognize it, you know, at the moment that they have the Buddha nature, yeah, visualize, imagine, or feel, you know, that they all recognize it, you know, and then embody or are the Yidam deity. And as a Yidam deity, you basically have omniscience. So, so you see sort of how appearances are and how the nature of appearances is, emptiness. And of course, the Yidam deity itself is also like that, you know, appearing as a deity, as purity, but at the same time being empty by nature. So that is a little bit, I would say, this visualization is a little bit like a development stage, a little bit, what we do in sadhanas, kyerim. So yeah, we are training in pure perception, and we are visualizing deity and so on. And then comes the next stage in sadhana practice, where the tsokrim, the dissolution stage. Then settle your mind in an open state, free of thoughts and conceptual elaboration. So here, basically, we drop all doing, and yeah, exactly what the said here, so beautifully translated, like then without any constructs, without any stories, without any doing, we are resting in what is, in the nature of things. That is always good, this tool, I mean, every sadhana is like that, but also in non-sadhana contexts, like let's say we study, then it's good to study, and be in detailed, but then also at some point we always should drop it, and then let it sink in, by having this open state, free of thoughts and conceptual elaborations. Because this will help you to make progress and enhance your compassion. Okay. Okay. Please raise your hand if you have anything. Otherwise, I will continue. The source of the Mahayana path is the mind of compassion. Yeah, Jamie mentioned that already. And Mahayana includes the Sutra Mahayana, right? The common general Mahayana, but then also the Vajrayana, the Tantrayana. And for both, the heart is compassion or bodhicitta, Otherwise, it will not work. Paula is saying, in the state free of thoughts, compassion is still present. Yes, because that is not the compassion anymore that I might have, the thought of, oh, somebody's suffering and I help. But in that natural state, then it's more like an unconditioned, referenceless compassion. So it is inseparable sort of from that state. So compassion here is like likened with a stream of nectar. It has this cooling quality, like moonlight, which swiftly grants the benefit and happiness. And then this cooling aspect means it's curing all the burning fires of hatred, the supreme cure that quenches hatred's burning fires. That is hell, hell was mentioned earlier, like if one is in a state of hatred, that is already hell. So if we rely on that, the mind of compassion, continually, and then Buddhahood is at your fingertips, So then that is really the key to Buddhahood. Yeah, I mean, Buddhahood, why do we want to attain it? To be of even more benefit, that we are really able to benefit others, So the more compassion we have, then that is the training that makes us a Buddha. Then the last one. May the words by which I have expounded this most excellent discourse on compassion be seeds of merit that produce a pleasure growth of benefit and happiness. Yeah, here our author is concluding by dedicating. Yeah, but what we always do, right? Good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, So in the end, we express our compassion and bodhicitta by sharing all the goodness that has been accumulated, all the merit, so that all attain Buddhahood. And then the colophon, Jamie went through that already, is the careful yogi named Manjughosha, usually Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, compiled this text from a very concise instruction manual by Nisarpa Jamyang Khyentse Wangshuk. May it be virtuous. Yeah, and Jamie already mentioned this Khyentse Wangshuk. Here's one picture of him. not the best quality, but you get an idea. Yeah, and that concludes the text, and would be lovely to hear from you to discuss on it, if you have anything to discuss. Tara.
Thank you, Arne. Thank you
Good
for
to see you.
explaining. Good to see you. Thank you, Jamie, also for explaining. I'm asking in the context of, while we understand compassion in the Buddhist sense, sometimes there are difficult situations in the world. Let's say like really extreme situations like terrorism, okay, and war. And a lot of those things happen because there are innocent people who need to be protected. And there is an expectation, at least I find when speaking to friends and non-Buddhists, the expectation is, oh, you're Buddhist, you need to just sit down and say love for everybody. Why do you want to push back? Why do you want to fight back? Because that is what compassion is supposed to be. And I find it very hard to explain to people that that is not the limit of compassion. It doesn't mean you don't do anything to protect innocent people. So could you just explain that also in the context of this practice?
Yeah, so I agree. Compassion can be active in the sense of action, physical action or verbal action, but that doesn't exclude that it can also be mental and the other way around. So yes, so if let's say, we had an example earlier before the Zoom started. If somebody is sick, like a flu, then of course we can be physically trying to give vitamins, but on the other hand, we can also do prayers, for that person, at the same time. So it's not mutually exclusive, but I think it's good to do both levels, because both is important, right? Because if I would only do the physical or verbal action, yeah, maybe that could be like an automatism or even dogmatic, or I could maybe even be condescending. And if I would only do the mental action, that could maybe be maybe because I'm lazy or just actually stingy, that I don't want to give my vitamins, So maybe it's good just to do both. And in your example with war, let's say, yeah, then, like, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo or Jamyang Khyentse Wangchuk, of course, is always asking us to have these benevolent feelings, or I forgot how Jamie was translating is Ningje, this the noble heart, something like that, or the beautiful mind with everyone, like with the victim, that is terrorized, or but also with the dictator, who's doing the war, so because both need our compassion, right? Obviously the victim, you mentioned that, but also, of course, the aggressor, because that person is so ignorant that he or she has no idea how much suffering he or she is inflicting to others and to herself, and how catastrophic, the consequences of these actions will be, So actually that person will suffer so much, and so, like, usually, the example traditionally is like, as a mother, with a healthy and with a sick child, of course she loves both, and maybe even has to take more care of the sick child for a while, which is the dictator, the bad dictator, So yeah, definitely both are included, the victims and the aggressors. And yeah, and then, yeah, again, if possible, do something physically and verbally, and also do these practices, which, this text is more like a mental practice, lo jong, mind training. But Jamie, maybe you want to add some things?
Yeah, compassion in the end is, as I said, yeah, the wish or the desire to dispel the suffering of the others. So whenever the situation occurs that you get the chance to do that, actively you should. Yeah, that's totally out of question. In the end, we are It's we are training in compassion in order to reach. That's the Buddhist idea, that you reach Buddhahood in order then to be able to do exactly that, to really have the ability to physically remove the suffering of others in the best possible way. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, that also reminds me, when we are in Bodh Gaya sometimes with Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, then he is always, you know, Chongsa Mandam is coming up in November. Then he is saying, yeah, this is a place for aspiration prayers, you know, because we are not able to really help, you know, physically and verbally yet, you know, so therefore, yeah, we really aspire to be able to do so. And yeah, that's why we want to become a Buddha, as Jamie said. Yeah. Tara, what do you think? Does all this, what we said, help?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. First, I think firstly, when you said the aspiration, that really, because we are, and obviously somebody like you and I probably cannot stop a terrorist or somebody. So there's a limit to what we can do in terms of action. And therefore the aspiration becomes really, really important. And in itself, it is powerful. But it is, I just think it's a little hard, you know, when we say these things very easily, but when we think of people who do real harm, it's very difficult to generate compassion. It's easy to generate compassion for people who we think deserve it. It's very hard to do it for people who we think do not deserve our compassion. And that is I feel, maybe that's the practice. So
yeah. Yeah, for me, what helps is like just generally to understand, like, let's say, yeah, just generally to think, yeah, we are all in samsara, you know, and we all have our obscurations, and then maybe in the terrorist case, the obscurations are just thicker than my obscuration. But generally, we are the same, you know, we are Buddha by nature, plus we are temporarily obscured, you know. But so it's not a big difference, you know, in those two levels. But I know, you know, it's like, it's difficult for me, it's difficult to be compassionate with somebody who's arrogant, you know, or proud, you know. And of course, it's your example, yeah, if somebody is harming others, yeah, why compassionate with that person, you know, but yeah, again, they need it equally, if not even more, you know, because they are this problematic child, you know.
Yeah, I think that example of the sick child really helps, because yes, the sick child actually needs the attention more and the care more. So yes, I that helps a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think also if we don't manage to immediately or spontaneously feel compassion for our worst enemy, as it describes in the direct meditation, you know, you're just supposed to visualize a person like that, and then just immediately feel compassion for the person that in a suffering state. If you don't manage to do that direct meditation, that's why it gives you the alternative of a gradual sort of reasoning based meditation, yeah, in the second part. And then of course it's always important to keep studying Buddhist philosophies, yeah, and the reasoning behind why all beings are considered our mother, and the teachings of karma, and so on and so forth. These things should be kept in mind. Yeah, this is a very concise and to the point pith instruction. Yeah, it's a mengag. It doesn't give you all the background. It takes these things for granted.
And then, since Jamie just mentioned it, even within the gradual approach, right, we have the gradual approach that we start with our mother, and then, you know, our family, friends, you know, and then slowly strangers, and then slowly the terrorists, you know. So it's really gradual, you know. So of course, yeah, if it's, I think it would be more mind torture, you know, if we have to start with the terrorist. But I think mind training starts with the one we love. Yeah, sort of easier. Anna.
Hello, good morning from San Francisco.
Morning.
Good morning. So I just wanted to say, sometimes with some of these practices, I feel the sense of being phony, this sort of sense of fake it till you make it kind of thing. And so for the first time, I'm feeling like, oh, this instruction is so good, because that repetition of, oh, my poor enemy, and really, this seems to be sort of like an antidote that I can summon immediately in the heat of a moment, because so often if I'm sitting on my cushion and I'm contemplating the Bodhicharya Avatara, it's very easy for me to get like caught in a state of bliss, but it's sort of in these heat of the moment things where I really have been praying and aspiring for a remedy to change my mind and change my heart and change the circumstances. And so I can really see this as that opportunity. And I just want to say thank you. And if you maybe could expound more on that heat of the moment remedies that this text offers. Thank you so much.
Jamie, you want to say something to that?
Yes, I mean, that's something that the mind training teachings are trying to guide us to, that we develop that we develop what's going on in our mind, that we catch ourselves that we manage to catch ourselves in the heat of the moment, that there is that point of awareness that suddenly pops up when we are in a difficult situation. That yeah, that's what the teachings are aiming for, to develop that awareness.
I shouldn't feel guilty about the fake it till you make it. So that's a very Western concept, but
yeah, true.
That's the best one I can come up with at the moment.
That's why it tells us to do all these repetitions, that it eventually becomes natural. Yeah.
I heard from Dzogchen Rinpoche exactly that term, fake it until you make it. It's fake, like in the beginning, of course. Because I can only, for me, I have more like an intellectual understanding, or intellectual wish, but then if I fake it often enough, it sinks to my heart, and that is where I make it or feel it or embody it. Yeah. So I think our whole practice is like, our path is like that, faking, and then more and more making.
Because for the first time, for example, my Sewe Lama, who I love so much, I mean, just even the thought of him just brings immediate joy. I mean, maybe I should just start visualizing him as in the heat of the moment. I don't know. Just a thought.
That's really, that is a practice, yeah. That is sort of a little bit guru yoga-ish.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you, yeah. And what Jamie mentioned, the awareness and mindfulness, that definitely gives some room, that we are not jumping into the heated kleshas or something, but that there's a little bit gap, and they slow down, with our awareness. So then things are more workable. Yeah. And Guru Yoga, I mean, the Guru is sort of representing the Buddha, the perfect. I mean, so if you're the perfect state, so if you're connected to that, that helps a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then I see there is a question by Paula. She's saying for her it's the first time seeing compassion/bodhicitta combined with yidam practice, and she finds it amazing. And it is like an exponential way of transforming your mind. Yes, I think so. Is it a special instruction? Yeah, I also find it amazing. I don't know if you read, Jamie mentioned Bodhisattva there in the 10th chapter, the dedication chapter. Shantideva is doing a similar thing, like he's going through the 6 realms, let's say hell realm, and then he is asking us to contemplate their suffering. And then suddenly he asks us to visualize, that they suddenly see light or whatever in their realm, and the suffering stops. Then they look up and see like a specific bodhisattva, like the deity. And then, also in the commentaries, then we are suggested to then visualize the hell beings being liberated and becoming that deity, by reciting the mantra of that deity. So these things, do happen. And I think, they're very beautiful. And it's really, what did you say, exponential way for transforming our mind and transforming those beings and those states of suffering. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, Jamie, did you have famous last words before we dedicate? Or
anything else to add, please?
Okay, then I will share some prayers, and then we can dedicate whatever positive we have accumulated through this discussion with all our mother sentient beings, so that they all attain Buddhahood as soon as possible. By this merit, having attained omniscience and defeated the enemy of wrongdoing, may I free all beings from the ocean of existence with its tumultuous waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Just as the heroic Manjushri who knows everything as it is, and as Samantabhadra likewise did too, just so to follow all of them and train myself, I perfectly dedicate these meritorious actions. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not arisen. Having arisen, may it not diminish, but ever expand more and more. As long as space remains, as long as the world remains, may it too remain to elevate the suffering of the world. Okay, thank you, everyone. And especially thank you, Jamie, for translating this wonderful text and sharing your wisdom and insights today. Thank you, of course, to Dongsa Asanga Vajra Rinpoche for teaching the text last week. And as Dharma said in the beginning, so we will try to do that every month. That we have a master teaching on the text of the month, and then a tutorial with the translator or other beings involved in creating that translation. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining and being interactive and sharing, and be happy and healthy, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.